to either?
No one.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. It is cocktail party week. Zach is heading up to Jacksonville for the Florida-Georgia game. It's an interesting one. I don't really know what to make of this one as we go into it. Florida's unranked. Florida has an interim head coach. Billy Napier is gone. Billy Gonzalez is in. The Bulldogs are ranked number 5. Always tough, but it feels like the rosters are a lot more even maybe than they have been in recent years. So we're going to break down that game. Myself and Zach, that's Zach Albaverdi of Gators Online. I'm Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online. We're also going to bring in Jeremy Johnson of Dogs HQ. He covers the Georgia Bulldogs. Before we do all that, we're going to talk about the Florida Gators coaching search. And then also, just to plug something down the road, next Monday, Zach and I are going to preview the Florida Gators basketball season. The defending national champs get started next week, and I know everybody's excited about that. So we're going to have a special show. Yeah, we don't want to bury them into this the weeds of this football show. We're going to give them their own show, as they certainly deserve it. But Zach, obviously a lot to talk about. I know you want to get rolling here, but we got to do a quick ad first.
Absolutely. Let's start as we do each and every show with a shout out to Game Time. College football season is in full swing. Florida is back in action this weekend. It is the cocktail party, as we still like to call it. And as you guys know, it can be tough to get a ticket to this game. But the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in a few taps, and incredibly easy to use. Plus, the Game Time guarantee means that you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. There are no surprise fees at checkout. I know this firsthand because this past home game that the Gators had against Mississippi State, there my son was on Saturday deciding, hey, Dad, I want to go to the game. Pull up that Game Time app. There were tickets all throughout the stadium to be able to get him in there. And some of these games you can get for as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code ON3 for $20 off your first order. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code ON3. That's ON and the number 3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go download the Game Time app today.
All right, Zach. The Billy Napier era is over at the University of Florida. He went 22-23, 3-12 against rivals, including 0-3 against the Georgia Bulldogs. Billy Gonzalez, the receivers coach of the Florida Gators, is now the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. I think, Zach, this is like Florida's 7th interim coach since 1984, which is just a really high number. And they've had mixed results, obviously. Galen Hall did so well, they ended up giving him the job at the end of the season. Totally different set of circumstances, though. Billy Gonzalez has his work cut out. There is talent on this roster, obviously, and we're going to break down the game a little bit later. But, we don't know which direction it's going to go. And we also don't necessarily know which direction things are going to end with the coaching search. That's a terrible transition. We know what direction the coach.
I know where you were going.
We know where Florida's trying to go. We just don't know where it's going to end. All eyes are on Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin right now, as he is clearly the top candidate from the Florida Gators side to replace Billy Napier. There certainly are other potential candidates, maybe some wild cards, Zach, maybe some guys we're not even thinking about. But right now it feels like it's Lane Kiffin or bust. What are your general thoughts on, the search 11 days into it? Billy was fired on October 19th, I believe.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see, where things have gone just in terms of the odds and stuff like that. The LSU opening obviously has added some intrigue into that. And then obviously what's taken place this week with the governor of Louisiana and the AD for the Tigers and that back and forth publicly. It seems like LSU and Florida could both be in competition for Lane Kiffin. However, I think there is a different direction that the Tigers could go. And maybe at this point, there's a different direction that they're going to have to go. Because if you're Lane Kiffin, do you really want to walk into that mess at LSU? I know that there's a lot of great things about that job, and the football program is in a better place than where Florida is, and they've had more recent success, obviously. But I think even before Keith, all of this drama has played out in Baton Rouge, I still think that the Florida job was a better fit and probably the preference for Kiffin over LSU. That's just my personal opinion. I don't dispute people that want to argue that LSU is the better job than Florida from a national perspective. But I think from Kiffin's perspective, I think Florida fits. And now with all the stuff that's played out this week, I think that the Gators look like the most attractive job to him if he wants to leave. We heard ESPN's Pete Thamel come out and say that he really doesn't expect Kiffin to be back in Ole Miss, or that's just his read of the situation. So, look, he hasn't come out and denied the Florida job. He hasn't come out and obviously signed an extension with Ole Miss, even though the AD is on record saying that he wanted to make it happen or wants to make it happen. Uh, and look, that's not out of the norm. Maybe some coaches wait until the end of the season or the regular season to do that, but we saw what Kirk Cignetti did in Indiana. So Lane has not shot down the Florida rumors. He has not come out and emphatically said that he's coming back to Ole Miss. And you even heard the message from his team, Keith, that he said that he delivered to the players. It wasn't, hey, guys, I'm staying in Oxford. It was all this talk about Florida as a compliment to what we've accomplished and everything that we've been able to do as a team. So I'm reading between the lines here. I still think that Kiffin not only is at the top, but I think all eyes are on him right now in Gainesville.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the overall picture here, and it feels like a good fit. And he's done an unbelievable job at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is a great place. And I think sometimes when people say, "Well, you think this guy's going to go here and leave there," it's a slight on that place. And I think we'd be feeling the same thing as people who cover Florida, and the fans listening to this, the Gator fans would be thinking the same thing if it came out that a successful Gators coach was looking at Texas, or Southern Cal may be interested in it, or Notre Dame. I think there's always that certain level of hurt. It's not a demeaning thing to a certain town, location, or school. Sometimes guys just want new challenges. Sometimes guys are looking at a certain situation and saying, well, I think I can win more here, or my family may be more comfortable here, or, whatever. And so it's not, it's not to be taken as a slight. He's been in Oxford, I think 6 seasons. And again, done a great job. They've been supportive of him. They've given him, by all accounts, everything that he's asked for. And so, potentially they could keep him. I don't think there's any question about that. It's going to be a difficult decision. What's number one on one person's list of the perfect job, maybe not number one on somebody else's. I mean, some people, Zach, are going to have LSU one. Some people are going to have Florida one. Some people might say, no, you know what? Penn State's the better fit for me. Notre Dame's the better fit for me. You just don't know. But again, you're looking at what does Florida want? Which Florida coaches have been successful, Zach? Guys that are confident. Right?
Yeah.
Steve Spurrier, Charlie Pell, Urban Meyer. Galen Hall was a little bit more reserved, but I don't think he lacked in confidence. He just wasn't,
Even Dan Mullen, he has the 3rd highest winning percentage in school history, Keith.
That's right. Confidence.
Yeah.
What's the second trait? They all had some kind of offensive system that was either unique to its time or, even you go back like Steve Spurrier, everybody thinks of the fun and gun. Obviously, that really changed the SEC from a 3 defensive back league to a 4, 5, 6 defensive back league. But you even go back before him, Ray Graves, when he was at Florida in the 60s, well before our time, but I've read, he came in as a defensive assistant from Georgia Tech. He was an assistant under the legendary coach there, Bobby Dodd, and he got to Florida, but he had the foresight to go sign Steve Spurrier, to let the offense change and evolve into what at the time was one of the more pass-heavy offenses in the country. Now you look at the numbers and they'd be very, very slight compared to passing today, but at the time it was different. Charlie Pell had the foresight, Zach, after the 1979 disaster, to go hire a 27-year-old named Mike Shanahan from Minnesota to be his AD. So they went from I formation to basically like the run and shoot. That was. I mean,
OC or is OC?
What did I say?
AD.
Oh, AD. Okay, as his OC. I'm sorry, as his offensive coordinator. And so, but again, that was a revolutionary thing at the time. The I formation to the run and shoot, and it slowly paid off. What paid off the next year, Florida had the biggest turnaround in NCAA history, but offensive numbers got better and better. So we've seen guys that are offensive-minded guys do well in Gainesville. So
I gotta ask you something as a Buchholz alum.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Layla went to Buchholz.
Layla Kiffin, yes.
How much of an appeal do you feel like there is for the family in Gainesville?
That's a good question. I never knew Layla that well. She was a few years behind me at my alma mater, Buchholz. I think we might have ridden like in a car after a Florida Georgia game one year, but I don't really know her. She dated a guy that I was friends with, but again, I didn't really know her, so you never really know about that. John Reeves, at the time of his passing, her father, the legendary Gators quarterback, lived in Tampa at the time of his passing, but he always loved Gainesville. I think he went back to Tampa because that's where he was from after he got out of coaching. John Reeves went to Robinson High School. He grew up in South Tampa, and that's where he worked at the end of his life. So, but I think there was a special place in their hearts for Gainesville as a family, but I don't know specifically to Layla. The reality of it is, Zach, a lot of people love their hometowns, and we talk about that a lot, but there's also people that couldn't wait to leave their hometowns.
Correct.
And that's what we don't know. She, as far as I know, everybody that knows her says she's a great person.
I just feel like for the Kiffin family in general, just the state of Florida is appealing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, obviously Lane's father was the great defensive coordinator, Monty
Absolutely.
Kiffin.
Tampa too, baby.
That's right, the Tampa Bay Bucks. He'd been a college assistant before that. Lane, I believe, was actually born in Lincoln, Nebraska. His dad was the defensive coordinator of the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the early 70s. By the way, Zach, when they played the Florida Gators, this is a great story. I need to find this out. I need to just reach out to Lane one of these days. His dad was, I've interviewed Lane before. His dad was the defensive coordinator of the Nebraska Cornhuskers when they played the Gators in the 1974 Sugar Bowl.
Wow.
At the time, Lane's mother, Monty's wife, was, I think, 4 or 5 months pregnant with Lane. Lane might have been in New Orleans in his mom's belly for a Gator game.
That's crazy.
So there are ties to the state. And I want to point out, I think his brother, Chris Kiffin, the outstanding linebackers coach at Ole Miss, who has extensive time in college. In fact, he was at Ole Miss before with Hugh Freeze. You'll like this, Zach. He recruited Laramie Tunzel and Robert Kimdichie to Ole Miss. He was the main guy on both those guys. With Kimdichie, also the other recruiter was Wesley McGriff, Crime Dog, the former Gators assistant. But Chris Kiffin, I believe, went to high school in Tampa at Jesuit High School. So there are there are ties beyond Lane and Layla. Chris Kiffin's got Florida ties. So again, but they may be comfortable where they're at. We'll see.
Well, and then you obviously Lane worked at FAU, so he spent the time. I think it that's really what it's going to come down to, in my opinion. I can't see Lane going to LSU after everything that's transpired. I think he's either going to decide to stay in Oxford or he's going to go to Florida. That's just my feel. And looking at the two jobs, like if that's what it comes down to, I think there's no question which is the better job, but what's the better fit? What does he want? What does his family want? And what does he feel like is the better situation for him, maybe from a coaching perspective? All that's going to come into play. But you heard what Ed O said this week. And if you didn't hear, I'll relay that message now. He was on 1010 XL, and he was either asked or talking about the difference between Ole Miss and Florida. Ed, obviously being the former head coach at Ole Miss. He said, I love my time at Ole Miss, but when was the last time they won a championship? You're in Jacksonville? Put me in a Suburban. We can drive an hour anywhere and find a couple All-Americans. So that tweet made its rounds this week, Keith. And I don't know. Great perspective there from Coach O, and maybe even sounds like he's lobbying for Lane and maybe even lobbying for a spot on his staff. But I thought that was some interesting
comments.
Trying
to get the band back together.
Yeah, that's right, baby. What do you think about that? I mean, he ain't wrong.
Well, a couple things, though. And we always try to play both sides. And I know I'm Mr. Negative, of course, I was Mr. Negative right up until the time when everybody was calling for Billy to be fired. And I was saying, well, he's still a good guy. And then all of a sudden I was too positive. Anyway, Ed worked at Ole Miss and was let go by Ole Miss. So he I'm sure he's still.
That's important to point out.
But look, that doesn't mean things aren't accurate. You know what I mean? I mean, look, everybody knows that the recruiting base is stronger, but you could also argue that maybe that's less important these days because NIL, it's all about that.
Yeah.
The great Nick Saban said just this week that, look, you go where the money is. If you really want to win, you go where the money is. But I think you got to factor look, I love his insight, but I think that's sort of a simplistic thing because you're still not going to go somewhere that you don't want to live once you've been to a bunch of places. And so if they don't want to live in Gainesville, they ain't going. All right. And they're not going to go just to win. He can win in a lot of different places. So, but if that's where he wants to be, that's where he wants to be, livability. Edo was the defensive line coach for Lane Kiffin out at Southern Cal back when Lane was the head coach.
Was he there with him at Tennessee too?
That I don't know, but he was with him at Southern Cal. And, they obviously they go back a ways. And, yeah, I think Ed's angling for a job, and you could probably do worse than Ed Orgeron. I mean, he relates to parents and grandparents and recruits, and everybody that's 50 years. I mean, like it's crazy now because Zach, you and I are covering people that we used to cover their parents. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so if you're 38 to 45-year-old parent, you know who Ed Orgeron is.
Yeah,
you know him. I call him Orgeron.
And he was with him at Tennessee.
Yeah, okay. And people like Ed Orgeron. They do. They like him. I mean, sometimes you think he's sort of a caricature of himself, but people generally like him.
Sure.
He's engaging, he's personal. So we'll see how it goes. So I guess the question, we got Jeremy Johnson waiting in the green room here of Dogs HQ, but we know Lane Kiffin's the number one choice. We know it's Lane Kiffin or bust. And for anyone wondering, will Florida wait if Ole Miss is in the playoff? If they think they're going to get him or have a realistic chance to get him, yes, they're going to wait. Okay.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. The question would be, who's the number two? Who's the number three? And we haven't really gotten a ton of clarity on that, to be totally frank. You hear the names Eli Drinkwitz, you hear Brent Key, you hear Jeff Brom, maybe some James Franklin. Jed Fish. I mean, now I'm here. You hear. I was talking to Steve Wiltfong of On3 yesterday, and he said, a guy I take a look at is Kenny Dillingham of Arizona State. I agree with that assessment. So we don't know. There could be guys out there in the NFL that might be ready to make that jump back. It could be a big name guy in the NFL. You just never.
You saw my wild card candidate.
Who was your wild card candidate?
Brian Johnson.
Oh, Brian Johnson. Well, there you go. Brian Johnson. What was he? QB coach at Florida, right?
Yeah, well, and offensive coordinator for calling plays for Kyle Trask's record-setting season.
Well, you just don't know what's going to – what if Brian Schottenheimer, continues to go south in Dallas and they decide that's not going to work out, and then Florida says, well, we can't get Lane Kiffin, but, hiring the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys is a pretty good selling point for people.
Well,
so you just don't know what direction it could go in.
And I mentioned Brian Johnson. He's on the Washington staff with Dan Quinn.
Well,
he's the assistant here. He's the associate head coach, pass game coordinator, but the offensive coordinator is Cliff Kingsbury. That's another dark horse.
Well, what if Dan Quinn says, man, I am so tired of dealing with this NFL. I mean, I don't know. We always hear about people saying we hear that the word is that coaches are tired of dealing with where college football is headed, but it can go both ways. So anyway, all right, you ready to bring in Mr. Jeremy Johnson?
Let's do it. We could talk about that the whole show.
All right. There he is. Jeremy, who's Florida going to hire?
Somebody.
I got two questions. Who's Florida going to hire? Who do Georgia fans not want Florida to hire? Because that's what Florida fans that's the guy they're going to want.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, the names you guys are throwing out, like, I think you guys are, in the realm of who, you would think that would be the best candidate that would make the SEC be like, oh, man, that's going to be a dangerous thing for obviously the SEC, but like I think Florida's still a really good job, and it's just like one of those giants that's just been there, just sitting on this pound of like gold. Coming from a recruiting background, you just know the level of talent that's just in that state. All they really need is someone to come in and captivate their attention, and you're right back in it. And with the portal, you can do work in the portal, but then like, you got to think, like, there's a lot of kids around the country that grew up in Florida and didn't necessarily get the chance to play for Florida the first time around that may be like, I can go home and I can play for this guy and I can go home like this.
Yeah.
That lends itself to being someone, hey, that's a program that can flip really quickly. So it's very important. Like, I think hiring people in college football has become as important as it is in the NFL, where in the NFL you get the draft, you get, hey, I can get my group of guys in here. It's the same way in college football now. It used to take, give me 3 years to
build
my guys recruited and get them developed, but now it's like, man, I can have a completely different roster by next year. So I think that's where Florida is right now. It's like, hey, you can be an immediate contender.
But you got to answer my question. The second question, though. I just need you on record, Jeremy. All right, come on. If you're a Georgia fan right now and you're sitting at home and you're thinking, okay, I do not want them to hire this guy. Is it Lane or is it somebody else?
I mean, I think Lane is probably the one everybody points to. I mean, to me, it would be Eli Drinkwitz. I mean, like what he's done with Missouri. Like Missouri was like coming out of those, the scholarship ban, I believe, when he got there. I mean, that's a program that's continuing to, like, he turned them around in the SEC, and he didn't take a whole lot of time to do it. And when you start looking at how they play football, the teams in Florida that have been good have been built the way Missouri is built right now. They play really good defense. They run the football. They're big. They're physical, and they're aggressive. And I think that's more the style that works for Florida. And I think that's what matches up with Georgia and matches up with Alabama. Like, you look at the teams in the SEC who are really the contenders, it's run the football, play really good defense. I mean, as much fun as it is to watch some of these offenses, I mean, I respect Eli Drinkwitz and what he does over there at Missouri probably as much as anybody in the SEC, and I don't think people talk about him a lot just because he's at Missouri.
Yeah, that's good perspective because he is right now the betting odds favorite, at least on Bet Online. Mm-hmm. So we'll delve a little bit more into that, obviously, on this show and maybe circle back with you, Jeremy. But let's get into Florida Georgia week, obviously. Cocktail party in Jacksonville. What are your thoughts on this Dogs team so far and what you've seen from them off to 6-1 start, number 5 ranking in the country?
Yeah, they've been wild. The highs have been really high. The lows haven't been as low because, I mean, the game against Alabama that they lost, I mean, they basically played a bad half of football and just couldn't dig themselves out of the hole. So that's the thing, is they keep getting in these holes, and that's just, I think that's because they're really young. Like, this team's really young, and that's kind of been the case the whole year, but we're starting to run out of time to say, hey, this is a young football team because it's week, 8 for Georgia. I mean, if you're a freshman, you're not a freshman anymore. You played half of a football season, and it's time to grow up a little bit. So I think we're starting to see that, but the way they started against Ole Miss, I mean, defensively was kind of alarming for, a lot of people, and that's not what Georgia's used to doing. Ole Miss is really good offensively too. I think people have continued to see that, especially last week with the Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma had one of the best defenses, and Ole Miss just kind of did what they wanted to do for half that game as well. So it's not necessarily an indictment on Georgia as much as I think people probably thought it was, during that game. But overall, I think this is just really a really wildly unpredictable team right now that's got a lot of talent, but a lot of youth as well. And I think that's what you kind of have to expect that, with youth. But, they're growing up.
I think wildly unpredictable is something Florida fans would like to hear.
I mean, this game, I grew up living in Athens, and this game was one that it's always just been that weird game. It's like weird things happen. You know how people say that kind of about the Auburn and, when you go there to their stadium, weird stuff happens there. Yeah. This is another one where it doesn't really matter what the records are. It doesn't really matter who's been great. It's just, you just know it's going to be one of those weird games where it's going to be competitive and it's going to be close.
Some wild stuff could happen.
Yeah, it's one of those games, man. I don't really know why. I mean, but there's a lot of, I know just looking at this Florida team in particular, there are a lot of similarities between the two teams, and I don't think people have given Billy Napier. I know he's gone now, but like it wasn't like he was hurting for talent. There's talent on that football team. I mean, when you have talent in college football, you got a shot. So, that's kind of where, to me, this matchup is. It's a football game, and it's going to be a competitive one.
I think Kirby Smart, actually, of all people, Florida fans aren't going to want to hear this, but I think he said it best the other day. This game has just such wild momentum swings.
Yeah.
I think that's what really makes it unique. It doesn't feel, when you're at your home stadium, the momentum swings just feel different than when you're at a neutral site stadium that's split 50-50. And it's always been wild. And Obviously Georgia's got the upper hand, I think 56-44-2 in this series. Each team has had a lot of good runs through the years. And right now Georgia's on one, having won 4 straight games. Jeremy, Gunnar Stockton, he's not getting talked about as being, let's be honest. I mean, statistically, he's not throwing for 350 yards. He's not doing anything you don't think pretty. But then you go dig into the stats. The guy's completing 70% of his passes. That's good. 10-1 TD to interception ratio. That's good. Against Ole Miss, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's good. So, again, he's only throwing for 1,513 yards, so not really lighting it up per se, but efficient, getting it done, making plays. He can also move the chains with his feet. Of all the things he does, what do you think he does best, and where do you think he's progressed the most throughout this season?
I think his decision making is probably as good as Georgia's had recently. I mean, you go from Carson Beck last year, I think he ended up throwing maybe, I can't remember how many exactly interceptions he threw, but he threw some big interceptions that just kind of seemed like it was like, oh my God, why would he do that? But Gunnar Stockton hadn't really done that yet. I mean, he had the one pick against, I want to say it was Austin P. I can't remember what game it was, but it was almost like, hey, he just threw the ball to try to give his receiver a chance and overthrew him and got an easy interception. But like, that's probably his superpower right now is his decision making. He doesn't put the ball in bad spots, and sometimes that means, hey, you're not going to go and make the big plays. But I do think you're starting to see him turn that corner as well, where he's not so gung ho on not turning the football over that he doesn't play aggressively. There were some throws in that Ole Miss game that were just like, oh, okay, all right. The one Dylan Bell is the one that comes to mind down the sideline late in that game to go and put the nail in the coffin. Essentially, is he made a big time throw where it was over the shoulder and fell right in Dylan Bell's hands, and that was that. So I think that's where his next progression will be. It's just making big plays in the passing game. I think he's done it in the run game. I think he's done it in the run game a little better than maybe even I think we expected. He's around 300 yards almost in rushing. I don't know that we expected him, from our end at least, to be able to run the football like that. So that's been an added element to his game that's made him even more valuable because he's got 7 rushing touchdowns. Like, those are touchdowns you don't necessarily go and say, well, I expect 7 rushing touchdowns out of a quarterback. But, you look up, you already got them. Now you're looking at the end of the year, maybe at 10. So I think that's a big plus to his game. But I think his growth and his next step in his physical development will come with him, being more aggressive down the football field with the ball.
Yeah, DJ Lagway still doesn't have any rushing touchdowns,
which was surprising to me. I looked at his stats and I was like, I think he's rushed for 12 yards or something like that. I'm like, wow, I kind of expected.
He didn't have any last year either.
Yeah, and I know that's the thing about him is that you scout him and you watch him, and he's a really good athlete, and he can hurt you in the run game. But there hasn't been any evidence in the stats, at least. I hadn't really dug into his tape and all that, but you don't really get the sense that, hey, I need to defend this guy as a passer. I mean, one of the things Kirby Smart brought up this week was that, hey, this is a big guy. I mean, you have to attack him as if you were attacking a running back. I mean, he's almost 250 pounds. Like, that's a humongous human being to be trying to just go in there. Like, most times you go in there, push the quarterback down, and he falls down. And this is not one of those guys. And it just depends. I mean, honestly, I wonder how the referees are going to officiate this. And I haven't really paid, like I said, I haven't watched a lot of Florida this year just with how referees officiate him in the pocket because of, hey, you got him wrapped up, but are they going to blow the whistle? Because he can escape that and turn that into something. Like, how liberal will they be with that part of his game in the officiating side of things?
Jeremy, looking at Georgia's offense, there's some balance. I mean, they are averaging over 400 yards a game. We think, okay, they don't have this dynamic, exciting offense like we may have seen at times, but they're averaging well over 400 yards a game. They have 2 running backs that are over 350 plus. Nate Frazier at 349, and Chauncey Bowens, the former Florida commit, at 376. How important is it for them to establish some type of running? I mean, they don't look to me like a type of team that can win being one-dimensional. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's probably what they will tell you too. I mean, that's kind of where they start. They start with the run game, and they kind of build out from there because, I mean, Gunnar Stockton's still a young quarterback. I think he's, starts 9 or 10 maybe. So, you don't put a young quarterback out there and say, hey, go go stride for stride with someone and throw the football 50 times. Now he can do it. He did it at Tennessee. They had no run game that day either, and they found a way to get it done. But I don't think Georgia wants to play that way. Especially when you start throwing the football, when things don't go right, you have turnovers. When you have 3 and outs that are short drives, which put your defense it stresses your defense because now you're on the field for double the amount of time that you might have been if you just ran the football. So I think we saw a little bit of that in the Alabama game where Georgia's defense was on the field probably it felt like the entire first half they were on the football field because the offense just went 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and punt. And like that was kind of what happened. So, if they can get that run game going early, they'll lean on it and, slowly work in, in situationally and get Gunner going because he really seems to kind of pick up steam as games go on. He doesn't necessarily start really fast when it comes to come out throwing the football, bang, bang, bang. He has gotten better at that as well. That happened last week where they went right down the field with a couple of plays they had designed for him, but that's not really his bag yet.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this Georgia defense and how they could be a challenge for a Florida offense that's got a new play caller and obviously is going through some changes with the coaching change?
Yeah, I think Georgia's speed will give everybody issues. Across the board, there's guys. Chris Cole is one that comes to mind. He played safety in high school, can really run. I think when you're a guy that hasn't really been able to scheme against a defense like this, they do blitz and they do a lot of different things, but it's like, you don't really know what you can get away with based off, just how fast they are a lot of times. So they're typical Georgia, as far as size and all that. They just haven't really had that guy kind of step forward on the defensive front yet, and that's something that's unusual and different. So, if you're scheming against them, like you probably attack that secondary because that's where they've had the big plays have come. Some deep balls down the field. I would assume Florida's going to throw the football down the field this week because that's what teams are trying to do against Georgia this year. So that would be where I would start.
How much is it a concern that Georgia is either next to last or dead last in the SEC in sacks? Overall, the defense has had its moments and some games where they weren't great, but overall not terrible. But again, toward the bottom of the SEC in sacks is something we don't see very often with Georgia. So going into this game, how much of a concern is that, Jeremy?
It's probably, everybody talks about affecting the quarterback, and that's kind of been, what's been said. But, I think Jordan Hall kind of owned it. He said, hey, we got to have more splash plays. And that's kind of where, that it has to be a concern because there's a correlation to why your defense isn't top 4 and top 5 like it has been when they won championships to why it's kind of, a few spots down. But the sacks are, you cannot have a defense that doesn't get sacks because sacks makes playing defense so much easier. 2nd and 26 is much different than 2nd and 4. There's only so many times you can continuously stop people. And it also, you think about, we were talking about the offense. How many more possessions does Georgia get when their defense is getting sacks and they're consistently getting punted the football versus there's 8-minute drives happening and, sacks kind of put an end to that. And I think it's going to be a huge concern because I don't know that you can go win a national championship with some of these quarterbacks that are, playing college football right now without being able to get them on the ground. So,
Jeremy, do you get the sense, and sorry, Zach, I know you wanted to ask.
No, you're good.
Jeremy, do you get the sense that, and are people inside the Georgia program maybe more concerned about Florida this year than they have been in the last few years?
Yeah, I don't know if it's their concern. I feel like they kind of attack every game, kind of the same, but at least that's what they say. But, Jordan Hall, even his Jordan Hall interview was he told us a lot and he was really candid about stuff. So he, was like, hey, this year more than any, we respect this team. And I think, if you're watching film of this football team, they're 3-4. They fired their head coach, but this isn't. There was a reason there were expectations this year. There was a reason that Florida was ranked going into this season. That the roster hasn't changed. There's still good football players, and there's a lot of players on this team that could be playing for Georgia if they wanted to be. So, I think that is the ultimate, badge of, hey, there has to be respect here because these guys could be in our locker room versus like there's a reason that they wanted them, so they know they could play football. There's a lot of, they have a really good quarterback, and a lot of the things that Georgia believes in philosophically, Florida also believes in those things. So it's like you're looking in a mirror and you're like, well, this team's 3-4, but we believe in what we do, so it's like it must work. So why wouldn't it work for them? So I think there's a lot of mutual respect between the players and the coaches in Georgia's room. I mean, I think it's because of the talent level. I mean, there's a lot of talent on this team.
And then before we get your thoughts on Saturday's game, I want to get your thoughts on last year's game. What did you think about the way that played out with Florida having the lead, DJ Lagway going down, and then seemingly I thought that the game was going to be over after that point. The Gators still kept it a game until the fourth quarter. Obviously, Georgia pulled away at the end. But what are your thoughts about how that played out with DJ and the fact that now he's going to get another shot at Georgia on Saturday?
I think it just kind of goes back to what we were just saying. I mean,
yeah,
I think that was like, oh wait, these dudes can play with us. I mean, like their record is what their record is, but you look across the line of scrimmage and that guy is good too. So the fact that Georgia was like kind of got hit in the mouth early in that game was like, whoa. They hadn't had a lot of that up to that point, other than I guess they just beaten Texas, I believe. So it was like, Georgia's kind of riding their high horse a little bit, like, and then they had just lost to Ole Miss. So it was like, okay, Florida's not, ranked like these teams, and hey, maybe they're not as talented, but that ended up not being the case. And I think that's the case this year. I mean, I don't know that you catch Georgia by surprise again, but I don't even know if they were surprised last year. I think Florida's just a really good football team that has lost some games that maybe they wish they could have back. And I think that's kind of where they see them right now. And I think last year's game was a great example of that.
All right, we ready to get his prediction? I mean, can you give us some kind of, your thoughts on what's going to happen Saturday, Jeremy?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I don't see a 35-30 game. I think it's always like these weird scores with this game too. It's like 24-21. I'm going to pick it. I'll say Georgia wins 23-21. That's what I'm going to do.
23-21. He's right about this game having weird scores, Zach. In 1980, Georgia scored late on the play that we won't really get into. And Georgia won 26-21. You know what the score was the next? 26-21 is kind of a weird score, right?
Yeah.
You know what the score was the next year? 26-21 Georgia. 2 straight years, 26-21. So it has been one of those weird, quirky type games. Jeremy Johnson of Dogs HQ, always great to talk to you. Thanks for all the info. But before I let you go, look, man, I got to ask, really putting you on the spot here. Did that guy from Auburn cross the goal line? Put you on the spot, man. Got to do it. You could just hit the X button and pretend like you didn't hear me.
I don't think he did, man. It's been one of those things that it's almost become like a folk story at this point, because it's just like, man, we still talking about this, but it's like, I don't know. I don't think he crossed the goal line. I think the right call was made. The thing that really got me was like, how did you do all that reviewing and did not review whether the guy who recovered the fumble was down or not? Because he was never down. He was never touched, and he ran for a touchdown. And that just kind of just got lost in the whole situation. So I don't know. At that point, it was just like I was just mad at like having to sit around for like it felt like 3 hours that we were just kind of sitting around like, man, I really hope that this is going to be over soon because it's already midnight. It feels like I don't know. It was just like a weird situation.
Well, that's the wrong answer, but we appreciate you trying there anyway, Jeremy. We love you. One of our good friends, Jeremy, works at Dogs HQ. Make sure you go check out his work. That's the Georgia Bulldogs site, Georgia Bulldogs site that's part of the On3 network. Jeremy, Rusty, Jake Rowe. It's a great crew, and we love their work. And that's it, man. Jeremy, have a good trip down to you heading down to Jacksonville?
Oh, I won't be there. I'll be at the comforts of my home.
All right. Well, have a good weekend, man, and we'll do it again soon. All right.
Appreciate you coming on, Jeremy.
Absolutely.
Take care, man.
And That's one of the good guys out there, Zach. He is a good dude. I've seen him at a lot of recruiting events through the years, and just a wonderful person, to be honest with you. That was
and
absolutely.
does both too.
He
Recruiting
does.
and football.
I knew his answer on that fumble. I tell you, man. But I still think the kid got in. I got to be honest. I think he got in on the play before too. But anyway, all right, Zach.
I want to still talk
let's
about
go.
this before we get to our predictions. You mentioned it right at the end before we went to Jeremy. I talked about it a little bit this week on the board at Swamp Talk at Gators Online. But who, Keith, and I'll give mine, and but who is your if they don't get Kiffin, because you said there really hasn't been some clarity on who's the second or third on Florida's list, and I agree with you. I mean, we think it might be this person or that person. And we heard what Jeremy had to say about Eli Drinkwitz. I thought it was good to get that perspective, because it seems like every time we write or mention Eli Drinkwitz, it gets absolutely crushed on the message board or on Twitter. The Florida fans, at least online, have been very vocal about maybe him not being their guy that they want. But I do think that he could be the guy if it's not Kiffin. I don't know that it'll get to that, because I think that they can get Lane. But if they didn't get Kiffin, who would your number two be? And I'll give mine.
Oh, you want me to go first? All right.
You go first.
I've done a complete shift on this. I've not put him on either of our two hot boards. I'm going to put him on the next one, mainly because I think that this is a guy that Florida needs to look at. Steve Wiltfong of On3 convinced me of this earlier this week, and I think it's Kenny Dillingham of Arizona State. He's a young guy. I covered him at Auburn when he was OC there. He's also worked at Florida State as OC. He's worked at Oregon. He's now built a solid program at Arizona State. The situation, though, he grew up in Phoenix. He's an Arizona State guy.
Alone.
And he has, that program, you can win there. So there would be some challenges to getting him. There have been actually some great stretches of Arizona State football. Dan Devine, I want to say, was there, the coach from Rudy at Notre Dame. I believe he was there at one time. They had a famous coach, Frank Cush. They won 10, 11 games almost every year. The year Florida won its first national title, Zach, I don't even know if you might have just been a baby.
Yeah, I remember this.
Arizona State was the other team in the equation that year. So they've had some great teams before. So, but do they have the resources? Does he want to get back to Florida? If he does, young, intelligent, passing offense, but knows how to work in the run like Steve Spurrier did with Eric Redd all those years, relates to kids, relates to families, has built a solid staff, and every staff is going to be built differently. And he thought that at Arizona State, in this moment in time, the staff I need to win, I need to go first and foremost, we need to lock down the state of Arizona, which, by the way, has talent. Christian Kirk was from there. There is talent out of Arizona. But we got to lock that down. So what he did initially was he hired a staff full of guys, primarily with ties to PHX, to Phoenix and Arizona, and it has worked. And I think that was a brilliant move. Now, you would do something different at Florida. Every situation's different, but it shows what he's got in between the ears. He commands respect. He's a young guy, and he looks young. He's in his 30s, and he looks like he's in his 20s. But he's a guy that I think Florida fans are like. He is confident, maybe even a little cocky. And again, he knows how to move the ball downfield through the air. And them getting to the playoff last year, obviously from an easier conference, but everybody thought they were going to get blown out by what was it, Texas, Zach?
Yeah.
They did not get blown out by Texas at all. And they also had the smarts to go get the Scatterbro kid, out of the transfer portal, right? I can never pronounce that guy's name. That's a brilliant move. That guy ended up, 100%. You look at the guy, who would think that he would be what he was? So he's got the chops. To me, that would be a guy I would take a much deeper look at if I'm Florida. There you go.
I like it.
Who you got?
For me, first of all, after Kiffin, there's just not like an obvious choice to me. It's just me or somebody that I'm like gung ho about. It has been interesting to learn this week from reading the Gators online message board over at Swamp Talk, and even being on WRUF this week and hearing from some radio callers, like Lincoln Riley is a lot of people's number two choice, Keith. And I was a little surprised by that, or not surprised, but he just hasn't been on any of the hot boards. He hasn't been in the betting odds. Like, no one's really talked about Lincoln Riley for the Florida job except for the fans. And it's clear that he's a guy that they would like. I wouldn't be opposed to that hire, or even having him in my top three. I do think that with him, it would be important to get the right DC, because that has been some struggles that he's had as a head coach, but very successful at Oklahoma. He seems to be having a better year at USC, but man, he also makes a lot of money there, and I don't know necessarily if coming to Florida and this part of the SEC is. I think he could work. I don't know if necessarily he's the best fit, but if you come in and win and you put up offense and you got Heisman Trophy winners at quarterback, you're going to fit in. But that being said, when I look at all the candidates, Keith, and I think about what Florida needs and what fans want and what's been lacking with this program, I do think a lot of it does come down to fit. The closest thing that to me that Florida's had as a fit for their coach has been Dan Mullen. Like, he was everything that, or not everything, he was a lot of things that Florida wants in a coach. He was, put up a lot of offensive numbers. He talked crap. He was confident. He embraced the Florida culture. He was part of the championship teams. Like, he did a lot, but obviously he didn't check all the boxes and he didn't win any titles. But I just feel like you need somebody here that gets the University of Florida, that gets this fan base, that can deliver the results that they want and the style of play that they want. And for me, that's why Jed Fish is my number two. And I know that there's other coaches, head coaches that are more accomplished than him in college. But I look at what he did at Arizona, what he inherited, an 0-11 team. That was an impressive turnaround to get them to 10-3 and land that Washington job. And then he inherited a Washington team that lost a ton of players to the portal. I think I read they only had 44 scholarship players or something like that. That was a lot of turnover on your roster. And to get them where they were last year, now they're off to, I think, a 6-2 start. Just got to win a top 25 win last week. He's got some other games coming up, obviously, where he can make some more statements. But his background at the University of Florida as a coach, as a student, his affinity, obviously, for Spurrier and how that shaped his offensive background, philosophy, offensive system. I think he checks that box, obviously. The fact that he's been a successful head coach and been part of a rebuild, that impresses me. And then the fact that he's been in the NFL and he's had stops. He's been hired by some big-time coaches. I think that's good for this era of college athletics where you are dealing with, the portal and rev share and roster building and working with a GM. Like, I think that having a coach with NFL experience is a benefit. And he hasn't spent time in the SEC, and he hasn't spent a lot of time in Florida, but he has been in Florida. He coached for 2 years at Miami, and he also coached for 2 years at Michigan. So he's been a part of some big recruiting battles, with Jim Harbaugh, and he's recruited the state of Florida. And obviously he went here and coached here to start his career. So I feel like if Florida has to go another route than Lane Kiffin, he would be somebody that I think could do well if given the opportunity. But I will say, I don't think it's going to get past the number one choice, Keith. That right now, that's what I think. That's what I feel. Obviously, things can change, but I still think that Florida's in the driver's seat with Lane Kiffin.
You got me spinning there. You were talking about Lincoln Riley, and I'm digging up all these notes on Lincoln Riley, and then you threw the curveball at me with Jed Fish. And look, a lot of these guys wouldn't be bad choice. I know nobody wants Eli Drinkwitz, but on our message boards at least, he'd probably be a good choice. The guy is winning.
I think he could win at Florida.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that could win at Florida. And but back to Lincoln Riley for a second. There are a lot of people that like him, and then there are a lot of people that say, "What's he done? He's done nothing." He's 31-16 at USC, I believe.
He was right? 55-10 at Oklahoma.
That's right. He's 42. Lane Kiffin was, I believe, 29-15 at USC. Now he was dealing with probation and loss of
Sanctions.
scholarship and all that, but he played an easier schedule. Lincoln Riley's having to play in the Big Ten, so we start even it out. And he's still a young guy. I mean, at 42, where was Lane Kiffin? Lane Kiffin's 50 now. Well, 8 years ago, Lane Kiffin was, I believe, at FAU. So, he's got a lot of promise. So the question with Lincoln Riley to me, Zach, would be, I think they think they're going to have a really good team next season at Southern Cal. So he's built this thing, and it might be hard to pry him out of there. I mean, obviously people have heard the chatter, oh, maybe he's not happy there. Maybe they're not happy. But I don't think they're ready to pull either side, from what we can tell, is ready to pull the plug yet. Or maybe somebody makes you an offer to refuse. Who knows? But, but it seems like
I just feel like coming to UF is a different beast too.
Yeah, well, timing is everything. I mean, there's a lot of pressure at USC. I got to say, timing is everything. And maybe if Florida's opening was next year, maybe it would be better timing, because then it would be like, okay, well, this was supposed to be the year and they didn't win, and he's ready to go and they're ready for him to go. But right now it seems like they're still in that patient era. We'll see. Now, they lose the rest of their games this year, it wouldn't matter. They might change their minds. But anyway, Jed Fish, good pick. I think you can win with a lot of these guys. But again, I'm with you, Zach. I think it's lane or bust right now. You do the homework. You don't just recruit one guy at quarterback. You recruit a bunch of them in case your number one choice falls through. But I like what I'm hearing about their chances with Lane. I think it's better than 50-50. But we're all sort of speculating because
no doubt,
I'm not in his dining room at night talking about this stuff with him. You know what I mean? Like, we like to think we know, we have insight, intel, and all that stuff, but we have some. But ultimately, that's going to be his decision. And by the way, Zach, he could think one thing today and change his mind in 2-3 weeks.
100%. 100%.
So, anyway, all right, you ready to do one more ad read and then break down this cocktail party?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. We'll once again give a shout out to Modelo. And I love the Modelo commercials that they've been putting out with Florida fans. Pretty cool and pretty fitting, considering how this Florida football season has played out. And we are more than halfway through, and college football season is Modelo season. If you're listening to this right now, it means it's time for reward. Reward your full-time fandom with an ice cold Modelo. Modelo is the official sponsor of the college football playoff. Gator Nation, you deserve a Modelo. Here on this Friday, this weekend for the cocktail party, make sure you grab you one.
All right, let's before we dig into the game itself, we want to make sure, if you like what we're doing, hit the like and subscribe button down below, leave a comment, and also go to gatorsonline.com for more right now. We got a deal where you can jump in for $1. We got a great community, great insiders, a lot of great voices, a lot of great intel, a lot of great articles, analysis, all that stuff. And, we're putting
you get access to the full network too.
That's right. And we're putting out about between 350, 400 articles a month. So always keeping you entertained. And not just that, but dropping nuggets, info, and intel on our message board daily. So make sure you check out gatorsonline.com. All right. Florida, Georgia prediction, Zach. I don't know what to think, man. Because you're thinking, okay, all along, so many of us have thought, okay, Billy's really kind of getting in the way of the offense. Okay. That's great to say, but he's gone now. And now Brian O'Hara's calling plays. It's Russ Callaway as the OC. Steve Spurrier Jr. is involved. Billy Gonzalez is going to be. We just don't know what to expect. And you never know what to expect going into this game as it is. And so now you've really got some uncertainty. When we know that Florida's got a better roster than it's had probably since 2020. But kind of, Zach, how do you see this thing shaking out? What do you think Florida's going to do offensively? You think what kind of changes you think we're going to see? I know you're going to probably do an article on that, but what can we envision here?
Yeah, well, I mean, Billy kind of put out their blueprint of what they've tried to work on and improve. I think the biggest takeaway is the pace of play. They're really going to try and speed up the offense. I don't necessarily know that they're going to be running tempo, but they are going to try and add the amount of plays that they can get per game and certainly per drive. So but more importantly, you got a new play caller, right? So he's Ryan O'Hara, the quarterback's coach. He's going to incorporate some things with Steve Spurrier Jr. And then Russ is still, obviously he's upstairs and he's putting together the game plan with them. But I just think you're going to see some different aspects of their passing game. I think they're going to maybe attack UGA a little bit differently than what they've put on tape. There's still going to be so many aspects of the system that are still there, a lot of plays that they still run, but there's going to be some new plays. There's going to be some new ways that some new formations I think that we'll see. And more importantly, and a couple guys have said this, that there's going to be, I think, different guys that are featured, Keith, but also I think the way that they're utilized and what they're asked to do, the routes that they're asked to run, I think that could look different. So one thing that we do have to consider is Vernell Brown III, Florida's leading receiver, is out. Aiden Mizell is out. So there are going to be some other guys that are going to need to step up. I think that from talking to Billy Gonzalez this week and J. Michael Sturtevant, that Eugene Wilson is in line for a bigger role. And I think that Billy Gonzalez, as his position coach, is going to try to want to get him going a little bit. But my biggest thing that I'm looking for is more passing attempts, more vertical shots, and maybe, who knows, maybe even a 4-wide set, Keith. We'll see.
I think we are going to see the 4-wide set. I think this is going to be reminiscent of that 1980 Florida-Georgia game where Florida came out with a bunch of wideouts. And I think, was it J. Michael Sturtevant that I read in the interviews from this week said that he expected it to be a big game for the receivers. I think it was him.
Absolutely. That was my question to him.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That tells me maybe less personnel, less tight ends in motion and going out wide and all. Because if the tight end's in there and he's going out wide and he's not in there to block, and therefore it doesn't matter, you don't need him in there. You could replace him with the receiver. So I think we're going to see more of that. I think you're right. I think we're going to see a little bit faster. Now, it's not going to be just this blazing fast thing, but a little bit faster to try to keep Georgia off balance and limit substitutions. DJ Lagway, this is an interesting thing. Now, he's from Texas, and Texas 7-on-7 football is huge. He has grown up in the game out there playing fast, playing 7-on-7, going down the field. Hey, we only got a little bit of time left. Go, 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 go. So I think we're going to see a little bit more sense of urgency from the offense. And that with the 4-wide, if it happens, I mean, we're speculating here, would then probably, if you're keeping a defense off balance and throwing mid, intermediate, and deeper routes, it's going to keep it's going to open up some running lanes because the linebackers are going to have to address things in the middle of the field, downfield a little bit, right? Well, that opens up for Jaden Baugh, okay? And that opens up for not having every gap filled every time he runs. So I think there's potential there. I just need to see them do it, Zach. And look, they got the bodies, man. The offensive line's better than it's played, but they've had some really crummy games. And then against Texas, they played brilliant. DJ Lagway's got it in him. The receivers have it in him. And then it hurts losing Mizell and Vernell Brown, no doubt about that. I expect a huge game from Dallas Wilson. I think they're going to run Dallas Wilson into the ground. I think this could be the game that Eugene Wilson gets downfield. So the potential's there. They just got to go out and do it. And we haven't seen them do it. Until they do it, I'm still going to, in my mind, think that. Like, okay, they got to do it. They haven't done it. There's no proof of concept. They haven't scored 30 points in an SEC game since like late last, or 60% of the way through last season. It's been a while. So is this going to be the week they put it all together? We'll see. Georgia's got some flaws. They got one loss. Almost were down 17-0. Maybe should have been down 17-0 to Auburn. They probably don't win that game if that happens. Lose or beat Tennessee when the Tennessee kid misses a last-second field goal.
That's right.
You could easily have 3 losses. Don't get me wrong. Good team, well-coached team, good players. But it's not the Georgia team we've seen. We just don't know what Florida team we're going to see. That's my big concern. But I like the matchups. I like the matchups for Florida.
I do want to add one thing about the offense and the changes and I guess a glimmer of hope. If you're a Florida fan listening to this, some folks might remember that I asked Napier about Hayden Hansen being in the game on that 4th down at Texas A&M when they had 4 wide, but one of them was a tight end, and he was all the way out wide. And I asked about that. Why not have 4 wide receivers on the field? Billy gave me his answer. And then I followed up with, well, why don't we just see more forward wide receiver sets in general? And Napier said and revealed that the injuries and basically Lagway not being 100% has led to him not being mobile, not running. And because he can't run, that's why we're not running 4 wide receiver sets. That's basically what he said, is that DJ can't run. And that's why, therefore, they don't run 4 wides. Well, if you listen to Billy Gonzalez on Wednesday, coming off the bye, more time for DJ to rest. We all know that he had the calf injury before camp, and then remember he had the injury during the game where he kind of tensed up against Texas. So he's been dealing with lingering stuff, but he's obviously had the bye week to get even more healthy. Billy Gonzalez said on Wednesday night after Wednesday's practice, when asked about Lagway's mobility, that he's a willing quarterback, that he's running around really good, and he's making plays. But here's the key quote. To me, he's as mobile as he's ever been.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion, I don't think DJ's been able to run around and show his true dual threat capability to what Jeremy was talking about earlier since the Kentucky game last year, and then since going into the Georgia game last year. That was when I feel like he was at his best. He was running around great against Kentucky, and before he had that hamstring injury against Georgia, he had that mobility. If he has that again in this game, if what Billy Gonzalez is saying is true, well, then there's some things to like about the potential of this matchup, Keith, and I'll break them down right now. Georgia has a lot of advantages against the Gators in the statistical categories, but there's a few where they don't. One of them is sacks. We mentioned that with Jeremy. They rank 120th nationally and dead last in the SEC. Georgia only has 8 sacks this season. Florida has only allowed 14 sacks this season, which is about middle of the pack in the SEC. Not bad. If Florida can protect DJ Lagway on Saturday, and these stats hold up and Georgia is not able to get after their QB, and he's mobile as he's ever been, to me that says, at least on paper, that Florida should have the potential to maybe run some 4 wide sets and utilize their receivers more, as J. Michael Sturdivant hinted would be the case. And oh, by the way, Georgia's really elite at pretty much all the major categories on defense, including they've been really good in the red zone. But the one thing that they have not been great at is pass defense. They're giving up 222 yards a game. That's not terrible, but it's 12th in the SEC, 71st nationally. Keith, if you can get those receivers going, if you can protect Lagway, and if he can run around and allow you to get those receivers downfield and run them more, at the very least, we're going to see some intriguing stuff and something different on offense.
And also, if he's mobile, you then probably make him a little bit a part of the run game, maybe 5 to 7 carries a game, which forces some real eye discipline from the secondary, which then allows you play action shots downfield. And that's what Florida had last year that we're not seeing this year, quite frankly. 10 yards per attempt last season in the passing game, about 6.7, 6.8 this season. That is a huge difference. I mean, 3 yards of play is huge, right? So, and what's the thread there is that DJ Lagway, he's got 12 yards total rushing, including, I think, sacks this year, and he had over 100 last year. So that's a big difference. You just need them a little. There needs to be some kind of threat, because if they know there's no threat, they don't have to worry about it. That's one less thing that they've got to be concerned with. But if he can run, if he can do anything in the run game, you got to worry about that. You got to worry about Jaden Ball. You got to worry about counter plays. You got to worry about draw plays. You got to worry about play action. 4 wide. I mean, there's a lot of things that Florida can do when he's healthy that Florida can't do when he's not 100% healthy.
Sure.
And that's a discussion for another day. Why isn't he healthy, and what does that mean long-term for Florida? But if he's healthy 100% this week, that certainly opens things up. And but we'll see. I mean, look, new guy calling plays, new thoughts. It's the same offense. We need to point this out to everybody. You don't just put in a new offense in the middle of the season. It's the same offense. It's what plays you run, what personnel you have,
I mean,
And
Billy G basically said there's plays in the playbook that they hadn't been running.
yeah. I mean, the great thing about Steve Spurrier is we know him as this great offensive mind, but he had a great way, Zach. You probably know him better than I do, but he had this great way of taking something that we all think is complicated and making it sound simple, right? So back in the early 90s, Florida moved Monty Grove from like linebacker to a safety position, and a big deal was made out of it. And Steve Spurrier said, I don't understand the big deal. We moved the guy this far. Okay. Same guy, moved him about a foot. Another time he said, people know the plays. They really knew Florida's plays. They just didn't know when he was going to call them and what personnel would be in. And you know what I mean? That was the brilliance with him. Everybody knew the playbook. Yeah, they throw in a trick play here or there, but everybody knew the plays, okay? And they knew that they were going to run the counter with Eric Rhett. But how do you stop it, when you've got so many other things to worry about? So it's going to be the same offense, but like you said, Zach, the same offensive structure, all that stuff. But maybe we're going to see plays within that offense that we haven't seen, but also the personnel. The 4 wide thing is so intriguing, and our buddy Shane Matthews has been wanting Florida to do that.
He's been beating the table for it
for a while, yeah. And look, I mean, this is one of the more intriguing games ever, and but you really don't know. You don't know. It could go in either direction. Right now, I got to pick Georgia. I'm going to say like 27-23. And I say this all the time, but Florida can win. But I truly do believe if Florida gets off to a decent start, the players are going to start feeling good about themselves, all that stuff. But, the leadership structure, we don't know how that's going to – we don't know. I mean, it's some schools it works great with an interim coach, some it doesn't. So we just don't know. It's a tough opponent, but I think the rosters are right there. If it goes into the fourth quarter and it's close, then I would say maybe I might even give Florida an edge, even though Georgia's been there. I get it. They've been there. They've gotten some calls. They seem to be making their own breaks. They're finishing off games. But if it's truly down to the wire, man, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like Jeremy said, strange things happen in this game. But right now on the surface, I got to go 27-23 Georgia.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point, Keith, because the one thing that we can say about this Florida team under Napier is that they never did quit. And he and his staff were able to keep them in games and keep morale high, even when they were trailing, even when they were needing to come back. So what will that look like under Billy Gonzalez if, like you said, Florida doesn't get off to a fast start, finds themselves down early or at halftime? What is the morale going to be like in the locker room with somebody else leading the team and just a new look there? So that's why it's so important for Florida to get off to that fast start. I think it's going to be key for them to win the turnover battle in this game. That is another area that the Bulldogs have not done well, and Florida is better than them at. So red zone is really going to be key as well. Florida is a top 10 red zone offense, and Georgia is a top 10 red zone defense, actually number 13. So, I mean, they're up there. They're elite. So I think that matchup in the red zone, if Florida can get inside the 20, if they can, get some touchdowns against a really elite Georgia defense, that's going to help their chances to win this game. All that being said, Keith, I'm with you. I still got to go Georgia here. There's just too many, too much newness for me to know what to expect. I certainly can see a scenario where, as Jeremy said, this team is wildly unpredictable. This rivalry has been weird. Florida was able to compete with Georgia last year, and now they're going to potentially throw some stuff at them offensively that they haven't put on tape, and that they maybe could be able to catch Georgia with. But when you're talking about having to do that to win the game, I got to go with UGA.
Yeah, and also there's been the injuries have really started to pile up on defense in certain areas for Florida, like particularly in the secondary. And so they're going to be tested. If Florida can make Georgia one-dimensional, that's the key to every game, make the other guy one-dimensional. But if you're Florida, would you rather take away the pass and first or the run first? Because if you take away the run first, you're kind of exposing your dinged up secondary out there. So that's an interesting thing. And Ron Roberts, the Florida defensive coordinator, has got a lot to think about there. But, with Napier leaving, people have been saying, Zach, on the message boards and in the Gator ether, well, it can't get any worse. We think. You just never really know. But it also could get better. and it also could get a lot better. And we're about to find out. Look, the kids are playing hard. And the great part about this NIL era, for all the weird stuff about it, Zach, and it's weird, and these guys are making a lot of money, and we go work over the complex, and guys are pulling in Lamborghinis. I mean, it's different. It's taking some getting used to. But for all of that stuff, they got to play for that money. They got to earn it. And these next 5 games, that's going to determine a lot for a lot of these guys moving forward. They got to put good stuff for Florida, both teams, but Florida specifically. They got to put good stuff on tape to keep those checks coming. They got to put good stuff on tape if they want to stay Gators, because that next coach may look at this. They're going to do a heavy eval. They're going to do a deep dive on these guys. And, man, if they see guys like
loafing,
they're gone, man. I mean, they ain't going to – I mean –
well, they're not. I don't know if they're gone, but they won't pay them what they want.
Well, that's right. Yeah, pay cuts. I mean, so all that stuff. So there's still a lot to play for. And again, you're right. They have to do it. And we'll see. Florida's record in rivalry games is not great in recent years, but again, it just feels like the rosters are closer than they've been, and I like some of the matchups. I just do in this game. If it's 28-3 at the half and Georgia's ahead, well, then I'll be dead wrong. But I think they got a shot. That's about all I can. That's about as far as I can go. That's as far of leap of faith of that as I can go right now. But anything else you want to add, Zach?
No, I'm just ready to see how it plays out, and then I'll be excited to get back and see Todd Golden and the Gator boys kick off their basketball season. And like you said, we'll come back with a preview show before that on Monday.
Hey, if they win, last thing, if Florida wins Saturday, Billy Gonzalez gets carried off the field, right?
I would hope so. Gatorade bath too. Gatorade. I mean, yeah, you be the top 5 team and the number 5 team in the nation in a rivalry game to snap a losing streak 100%.
Here's the other thing: if you win this game, man, all of a sudden the possibilities for a finish like last season are on the table. Kentucky on the road next week. It could be cold up there. Actually, I think it will be a dangerous game. Ole Miss on the road. Obviously, they're very good and very good at home. But if you can beat Georgia, this is going to change up here. Right? They know they got a good team. Florida knows they got good players. They know all that, but they don't know that they can win these games yet. Right? They've done it once against Texas when Texas turned out to not be as good. Some good vibes could lead to some good wins down the road. We'll see. All right. I'm Keith Niebuhr. That is Zach Albaverdi. This was the Gators Online Show. We appreciate everybody stopping by. Hit the like and subscribe button down below and go to gatorsonline.com right now. $1 gets your foot in the door. You get in there, you can start making fun of me and Zach on a daily basis. We welcome that. All right. So everybody have a safe weekend. If you're headed to Jacksonville for the cocktail party, be careful out there on the roads. Enjoy the game. The page has been turned. The lungs are healing, Zach. Let's see what the boys can do. All right. Take care, everybody.